First of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining today. And I also thank librarian Claire Vericio and the Library Foundation for hosting this talk. And my partner, Nilushka Melnik, you already met her. So do you want to introduce yourself, Nilushka?
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. I know some of you are joining us from a different country, so very good to see everyone. I think, I will just say a quick bit about myself. I'm Nilushka Melnik. So as Sunil mentioned, I partner with him on giving mindfulness and meditation talks, especially as it relates to relevant or practical topics like managing challenging relationships. I personally have been around and exposed to mindfulness and meditation for pretty much my whole life, mainly watching and practicing with my parents during childhood. But I started formally practicing about 16 years ago and have really taken the last 6 years to deepen my own experience. And I've started to teach and coach now. I am also a mom to my 8-year-old son. And I will say that compassion, mindfulness, and meditation, all those practices have definitely helped me deal with challenging situations, relationships, both at work and at home. And as part of my day job, I am also a workplace mindfulness facilitator and mental fitness coach. And I lead strategy and portfolio management at Stanford Healthcare. So I just want to welcome everybody to today's talk, and hopefully you can join us for the subsequent sessions after this. Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you, Nilushka. So let me give a short background about myself and how I got into mindfulness and compassion. I was born in Sri Lanka. So my journey from a rural school in Sri Lanka, studying in England, joining Philips, working on the innovation of the first digital consumer product, compact disc, for those of you who know what it is. And early 1983, I was expatriated to Japan with my wife and 2 girls, 2 and 3, and my partner in crime, Nilushka, was 2 years at the time. And so I was landed in Japan, where we were based, and I was covering the Asia Pacific region. I was a young engineer, and I was traveling a lot in Korea and Taiwan, emerging economies, and China was just starting at the time. So there was a lot of stress, a lot of challenge, because there were 2 other systems competing for the world standard, and CD was one of them, partnership with Sony. And I soon realized I needed to manage my stress and all the challenges. So I started mindfulness practice to manage my stress, and compassion to appreciate diversity and respect differences, because all these countries, as you probably are familiar with, different cultures, different languages, and doing business, building business relationships and social relationships was a major challenge. So with that, I think I found my way through, and I was successful going all the way to a general manager of the division. So today, I like to share some of my experience. And also recently, I did a 11-month course at Applied Compassion Academy in CCARE, which is Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education at the Stanford University. And I'll give you a bit more about it later. And so I'm sharing some of the things I learned, as well as a lot of the wisdom over 2,500 years old, or from 2,500 years, and also my direct experience. So I like to acknowledge all the venerable ones who passed down the ancient knowledge, and also the scientists who are working on research on this subject. And the effort of Stanford is to spread compassion across the world, and it was a participation from about 25 countries. So let me move to the next slide. So first I'll do introduction to understanding relationships. So this is an important part before we talk about challenges. And then I'll talk about stresses and strains in relationships, and then addressing challenges in relationships. So as an engineer, I'm analytically minded. I explore underlying principles behind the practice, and some of you may find somewhat kind of new ideas and concepts. So it is rather technical. Please bear with me. Please remember that I'm transferring knowledge, but knowledge that you gain is of no use unless you do one of two things. One is to share, and the other one is to put them into practice, build the skills, and build wisdom. So with that, I like to invite you to think of a challenging relationship in your life, or strained relationship, or a relationship that you like to foster. And in the classes that follows this talk, we will go into more detail. But for this presentation, if you think of one, and then you can relate the concepts that I'm presenting to your own experience and try to understand them. And during the presentation, you can send questions to through the chat, and Nilushka will monitor them. And I will ask you can ask any clarification questions through the chat during the presentation. And at the end, I'll leave enough time for questions that you can ask yourself. And generally, love and compassion is thought of as touchy-feely subject, which is true. And we don't think any more deeper than that. But today, I will dissect them to give a different perspective necessary to address challenges. Because you need to take a different perspective about the relationships if you want to address the challenges. As Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity. So with that, so one other thing I like to mention is what I'm doing in this talk, as well as the workshops that follow, the 3 workshops. It is not therapy. It is introducing tools that you can use to manage relationships by yourself. And if you have any trauma or anything like that, of course, needs professional help. So understanding relationships is next subject. Let me see. So our happiness is entangled with the web of relationships. This is very important to realize that really our happiness is, if you really think about it, is all about relationships. Of course, other than material gains. And the modern research shows good relationships are the most consistent predictor of happiness in life. And most of our stress, again, if you think about it, they're related to relationships, either personal, social, or professional. So let's look at what is a relationship. This is a dictionary definition, the way in which 2 or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. So when we say connected, why do we connect with each other? and we connect to fulfill each other's wants and needs. This will be a theme I will discuss as we go through. And then we create emotional bond that strengthens our relationship. Normally we refer to as love in most cases. And so with that, let's look into causality of relationships and how you are treating yourself defines how you treat others. So health of a relationship with oneself is the most important relationship. I'll elaborate on this as we go through. And this determines the health of all other relationships. And you can relate to that as I mentioned. You think of a relationship and follow through as I go through this, and then we can discuss at the end. But our happiness is not just one person, so our relationships it's a web of relationships. And if anything goes wrong, it impacts all other relationships or most of other relationships as well. So to begin with, let me jump straight into our mind, because mind is the forerunner of all things. And understanding the mind, you can understand your relationships and issues and everything around it. So this is a simple diagram. I'll be expanding on this as I go further. So what is called self can be looked upon as two things, the rational mind and the instinctive mind, RM and IM. So the modern science supports this and it is understood. But again, this is something that's understood already thousands of years of wisdom. And the rational mind is an executive control center. And it is an evolutionary feature, or which is a recent evolution that is found mostly in advanced beings like humans, and you probably find it to some little extent on primates. The instinctive mind is autonomous and it is self-determining. This mind defines your reactions. It is the judge, jury, and the executioner. This is normally what we call the wandering mind. And also, this is the origin of human imperfections. Negativity is the common trend, and it is a built-in evolutionary feature, which we normally call fight or flight. And it helps survive, our ancestors survive, and they pass down the genes to us. So, I mean, just to elaborate on this, if you, our ancestors, when they were going hunting, you see a branch moving in the corner of their eye, which is extra sensitive for motion, as you probably know. And if you just say, oh yeah, that's fine, or don't take care of it, don't worry about it, then the chances are the day the tiger appears, the person wouldn't survive and the genes wouldn't be passed down. Whereas the person gets the worst case scenario, think, oh, it could be a tiger, and start running, the person survives, and that's the kind of genes that were passed down and that we have inherited. So in the modern times, the equivalent of that is we see a stranger, someone unfamiliar, maybe on the street or somewhere coming towards you. Our reaction is suspicion, fear, the unknown, because it is unknown. And this is also the root cause of our unconscious bias, and this is built in. We always have a negative bias towards somebody that we don't know. So today, this evolutionary feature is largely out of date for a civilized society, except for special situations such as, reflex action and, where we need to use such capability. And the antidote to overcome negativity bias is with compassion. So we will cover that as we go through further. So interplay between these two minds defines who you are, how you think, and how you behave, your personality. And the two minds together we call self, I, me, mine, and so on. So important thing to remember is that if the rational mind collaborates with the reaction, as we said, reaction is, it happens, you have no control over it, it'll come to your mind. And if your rational mind collaborates with it and produce what it collaborates with what is produced by the instinctive mind, then you are unmindful. You are not mindful. However, if the rational mind is able to evaluate the reaction produced by the instinctive mind and generates a considered response, then you are mindful. So this is a key difference, and we will have an experiment to understand this. So clearly, it's important to know this fact experientially. The root cause of most of conflicts in our relationships arise also from this fact. So with that, let's do a short exercise. And let me go through this first, and then I'll guide you through what to do. And so what you do is, so how to discover. So in this exercise, you relax first, and then pay attention to your natural breath, and then start counting your breath. At the exhale, you say 1, and then breathe in, breathe out 2, and so on. And when your mind wanders, or when you realize your mind has wandered, you start the count again from 1. And what is most important is that you most likely will continue to count while the mind also is wandering. You can multiplex between the two minds. So you got to really, if you have not practiced, this will happen, and you may not know. After a while, only you realize that your mind has wandered. So to do this, let me guide you through. Sit comfortably and relax your body. Feet on the ground, hands on your knees or lap, wherever is comfortable. Relax your shoulders, your jaws, and keep your head, if you can, keep your back straight. If you are leaning against a chair, that's also fine. And feel the feet on the ground, feel the sensations, and relax your body. Just let the body relax, drop the body basically. And now draw your attention to the breath. Feel the air going in and out through your nostrils, and the abdomen rising and falling. You can pay attention to either the nostrils or the abdomen, either is okay. Important thing is to be aware of your in-breath and the out-breath. And now, as you breathe in, and then continue to breathe out, and at the end, count 1. And the next breath, at the end of the out-breath, count 2, and so on. Continue counting, and when you realize that your mind has wandered, note the number you reached and start your count again from 1. Remember, if your mind wandering and counting again, you have to start from 1. So I'll give you a few minutes to do this and try to remember the last or the highest count you reach. And also, please note whether there is any consistent pattern in the way your mind wanders to the same subject or same kind of subject. That'll give you a hint about yourself as well. We'll talk about it later. So I'll give you a few minutes to do this. Please remember the last count. Okay, thank you. And please remember the last count. And most cases, if you are not a mindfulness practitioner, it'll be maybe about 5. And if you practice mindfulness, of course, it can be higher. So whatever the number, don't be discouraged. And this is something you can try at home, quite safe. And with that, let's continue. So one thing you need to do is you experience the wandering mind. And so you got to befriend yourself. And this is the important part for any relationship. As you said, your own relationship with yourself is the most important. And so you got to discover yourself and bring yourself home. And the important part is what you just experienced, and how do you discipline your mind and come to terms with self-acceptance. And so what is important is knowing your own self. So this also enables you to understand your own personality. So come to terms with self and then learn to live together. So the exercises that we'll be doing in the classes will be to enable to do this. And it is sometimes, it of course takes time, but it is most important for general happiness and well-being as well, not only just for relationships. And so let me see. So to letting yourself in, you got to open your heart and let yourself in. And once you befriend with yourself, you will always have company. And this is the most important part, because loneliness or aloneness is an empty, hollow feeling that you have. And if you do not have a good relationship with yourself, this is a very unproductive, and it affects the relationships. And then once you're friendly with yourself, if you feel lonely, of course, aloneness and loneliness are self and with others. So loneliness is wanting to connect with someone or others, and no one is available to connect. So those are the two feelings that you need to observe within yourself by looking inwards. And at this point, then the question comes, who am I? And this is another important one, because to befriend yourself, first you got to understand who you are. And you are a product of three things. And from your young days, you have the origin, at least, your inception, whatever you inherited at inception. And at this point, we don't need to elaborate or worry about where it comes from. It could be based on belief systems, it could be God's will, it could be karma, or materialism with genetics. So whatever you believe in, it doesn't matter. The big question is, what can I do about it now? So there's no point blaming anybody also for any bad habits you may have. So then you have, once you have acquired whatever from your birth or inherited at inception, then from your environment you acquire certain habits, which is your culture, your parents, your friends, your extended family, whoever is around you, who influence you. And so again, when you are young, you didn't have much choice. So both these two criteria, you didn't have much choice, and it has influenced you. And as adults, you will experience that some of the habits and behaviors that you have are influence of what you either inherited or acquired. And then you have what you cultivate. And this is the most important part. And to cultivate, you use your rational mind, the willpower, and take intentional actions to counter any undesirable thoughts and behavior. And those behaviors mostly coming from instinctive mind. It is the instinctive mind that throws these behaviors out, if you like, because of past habits. And the instinctive mind behaves based on the past impressions you gain, experiences, and mostly impressions that really carved into your mind from your environment. And so if you compare yourself a week ago, a month ago, or years ago, you can ask yourself, have I built new skills and ironed out my rough edges? Because these are the ones that affect your relationships. And when you cultivate, you got to look at the habits as wholesome new skills, and which means whatever the skills that you are building benefits you or benefit others. And unwholesome meaning it will harm you or others. And this helps you gain wisdom. And of course, this is a chicken and egg situation. So the fact that you are attending this course itself indicates that you have the desire to learn and build new skills. So not everybody does that. And so by recognizing, looking inwards, looking into your mind and understanding, you don't necessarily have to understand exactly where you got those habits. If you have good habits, the wholesome habits, then you try to cultivate them. And if you have unwholesome habits, you try to kind of manage them and improve towards wholesome habits, getting angry, shouting at people, or whatever the things that, you do as a habit. And also negativity, which comes from, again, the instinctive mind. And with mindfulness, you can observe them arising, and then you can take action to alleviate them or divert them as wholesome. So you can, you have the total freedom to dream your future. So you don't have to accept what is presented. You have a choice. Just a simple story. One day, a beautiful lady went to a party with her boyfriend and came home, and she went to sleep. So middle of the night, she started dreaming. She sees a handsome young man, not the boyfriend, coming towards her bedroom and approaching the bed step by step. She was getting really shaky and sweating. And the man walked all the way to her bed, stood by the side, and then she shiveringly asked him, "What are you going to do with me?" And the man said, "Lady, it's your dream. You can do whatever you want." So you have a choice. It's up to you. So basically, with the inherit, as you understand what you inherited from inception, what you acquired and cultivated, you are a unique person. You have a unique personality. And this is important to understand, that you are a unique person, but so is everyone else. So every individual in this world, 4.7 billion of them, they're all individuals. And this is a very important concept to embody for the practice of compassion. So, unique individuality. With that, let me expand on the relationships, so-called emotional orbits and emotional distance. This will explain how the relationships work. So in the middle is the part that we already discussed, the self, the zero, and the one. And the strongest relationship is with yourself. and that is called the attached. And the next layer is called stronger or intimate. And generally, this is the spouse. And the examples I give are kind of typical, but it could be anybody. So this is determined by the emotional distance. And the emotional distance is the strength of the emotion that you have in the relationship. This is very critical to understand when you think about the relationships. What is your emotional investment, emotional bond? And so when you think about it, the distance from yourself to the relationship, these are the orbits around you, is called the emotional distance. And emotional distance, if for yourself, is the strongest emotion. Of course, you are attached to yourself, and it is one. And so smaller the number, higher the emotion. As you go further on the orbits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the emotions get weaker. And when you have a relationship with others, so I mentioned 0, 1, number 2, the stronger, which is your spouse, or let me go back here. Okay, so and this could be anyone else that you have attachment, and this part is again evolutionary. If you think about it, your soulmate, this is intimacy, and the feature, because it's evolutionary desire, that is for procreation of the race. So if not for that, you and I won't be here at this point. So this is what drives the human race, or any other beings, I guess, any living beings. And it is the strongest, and it is the hardest to control as well. And those bonds, if you, if there is a challenge, is the most hardest to deal with, and because the strongest emotional bond. And next layer is the family, and then the relatives and acquaintances, and the weakest that we consider is the outermost one. It is more indirect relationship the people that we don't know. Acquaintances are because you know them by name, maybe you've seen them before, but the outermost orbit, we don't know them, but they are the most important for us. We don't normally think about it, the value they contribute to us. So in early evolution, the outer orbit was not so important for survival. But as the trading began and the relationships grew, that became more and more important. And today, if you think about, for example, if your loved ones go away for 4 or 5 weeks, you can survive, you can buy food, you can eat wherever and do whatever you're doing, you can survive. But imagine if the people in orbit 6 goes away and does nothing, you wouldn't survive more than a day. You cannot, because we rely so much on this products and services and everything that's provided by the others. And we realized this during the COVID shutdown, how valuable those people are. So we should recognize them and have gratitude. And this is also part of our compassion practice, all 7.9 billion of them. So now we talk about these relationships. Let me talk about equitable relationships and inequitable relationships. So this example is Yuki and Jim. So these are 2 people. So these orbits are for each individual. So web of relationships, you get, however many people, there are so many diagrams like this. So this is just 2 people. So Jim thinks Yuki is in his orbit 2, and Yuki thinks Jim is in his orbit 2, or her orbit 2. So this is an equitable relationship. Whereas if Yuki thinks she's in Jim's orbit 4, whereas Jim thinks Yuki is in orbit 2, then there's a inequitable relationship. So this will cause issues, obviously, when they find out. And the one who gets most hurt will be the one in the inner orbit, which is number 2. Jim will be more hurt when Jim realized that Yuki is not in orbit 2 as he was expecting. But these kind of relationships are not totally impossible, and they are normally subservient kind of relationship. So there are others which I wouldn't go into in a lot of detail, but as I mentioned, the evolutionary feature, which is the most innermost number 2, is the important one. As Princess Diana said, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it is a bit crowded. So that explains it. So let me go further. So to maintain a good equitable relationship, there are two things. One is communication. So as we mentioned, the relationships are transactional. And this means we really need to understand each other's expectations, wants, and needs that are mutually fulfilled. And then the communication is a key part, and we'll cover later compassionate communication, which is a really important part of the practice. And out of compassionate communication, compassionate listening is most important. Again, I will come back to that. And then humility, accept missteps, and we all make mistakes, and we have to apologize and forgive and move on. And then we have to act, the actions we take. And so appreciation, if you can practice that every interaction with whoever, a loved one or anyone, as a new experience or new interaction, that way we can minimize our judgments. Because especially with the loved ones, we take things for granted, and familiarity builds contempt, and this is that leads to a lot of conflict. And then morality, extend gratitude and honor obligations. This is a critical part for sustaining a relationship. So one of the things is to remember is that things change, dynamic evolution. And we kind of focus on aligning as change, our expectations change. So as we grow, whether it's a marriage or any other friendship, people grow, and you need to continuously monitor your expectations or mutual expectations and align it. So this is important, particularly with parents and children. For example, so one day, the son graduated and went to college. And of course, mother was very concerned. And so first few days, the son was calling and saying, "How are you?" And mother was very happy. And a few weeks passed by and there were no calls. And after a while, mother was getting concerned. A week later, the son calls and say, "Oh yeah, how are you?" And the mother says, "Well, what happened to you? You haven't called me." And he said, "Oh, I was having so much fun, I forgot to call you." And if the mother is really concerned about the son's happiness, mother should be happy that he was happy, but she was not. She was unhappy that he didn't call. And the expectations we need to tailor as the family, or we move apart, grow apart, and mature. So this is important for not only just the family, but other relationships as well. So what makes a good friend? This is a list of things that you can come to. This is more ideal. So give what's hard to give. A good friend will give what is hard to give. And 1 second. Yeah, okay. Next one is do what is hard to do. So go out of the way to do things for a friend. So don't say, I can't be bothered. And endure what is hard to endure. So again, the friend do things for the sake of the friend and suffer patiently if he has to, or she have to. Reveal secrets. And so it's an open book relationship. Keep secrets. So lips are sealed, no gossiping. And rejoice your success and fret your failures. And so when the friend is successful to move into a bigger house, you are happy. And at the same time, if he has hard time, you will also feel his pain. And doesn't abandon you in times of trouble. So if you, for example, if you have a friend that you are both doing well, you enjoy the luxuries, and one day, let's say you are bankrupt and you can't afford the luxuries anymore, will your friend still stick with you? And same with the look down upon you in times of adversity. So, for example, your golf buddy, you're really good friends, you've been playing for a long time, and then one day you are injured and you cannot play golf any longer. Does your friend still visit you and keep company? So, stress and strains in a relationship. So this is somewhat technical. So it says, don't worry when I fight with you, but worry when I stop, because it means there is nothing to fight for us. There's nothing left for us to fight for. So what is important to realize is that there is a relationship between the growing stress and the strain in the relationship. So stress is the mental and physical tension. Strain is the impact on the stress, impact of the stress on the relationship. And the stress peaks and the strain self-propel to a breaking point, going from C to D. So let me explain that in a little more detail. So initially a relationship starts quite nice. So let's take the example of, I gave you before, Yuki and Jim. So they had a close relationship, equitable relationship, and they got married and they're happy. And Jim got a job in the Bay Area. He moves for a high-tech job, and they're all happy except for probably the rent they have to pay. And then, so weeks pass, and everybody. So Yuki gives hugs when he leaves to work, and welcome him when he come home, and so on. So bear with me; it's maybe a stereotype, but it's a good example for explaining the concept. So they're at A. So relationship is good, not much stress. And then Jim starts bringing work home and starts working from home some evenings. And Yuki was not too happy, but she understood as to, okay, this is part of the Bay Area life, high-tech stress, a lot of pressure. He has to work. So she accepts, but she's not happy with it. So starts moving up towards B. And this goes on for weeks on end. And he starts working 3 evenings a week. And now Yuki is not so happy, getting close to the point B. And Yuki confronts with some anger and tell Jim, don't bring work home, you can finish your work at work, and so on. So they get into arguments and the stress builds up. And then at this point, there are no hugs when the Jim leaves. Yuki pretends to be working in the kitchen or wherever, and the stress persists and strain continues. So, and then the Yuki feels like avoiding him. Now you pass the point of point B, and the stress lasts. So earlier stress was lasting only like hours and so on. After point B, it lasts for days, up to a maximum of 3 days. And she loses sleep, and the strain is really building up. And one day she calls her mom and says, explain to her the situation and tells her friends as well. So now she passed the point B, which means a point of no return, but she still is looking to way out. And Jim says, oh, I'm working hard for our own benefit to come up with, for our future, build a family and so on. But Yuki is not still happy with the fact that he brings work home. And then she reaches the point C because nothing is happening. This continues. And the strain, she passes point C. At that point, the strain will self-perpetuate. What happens is, so Jim realizes that there is a problem here, and he takes Yuki out for the weekends and so on. So the stress may go down, but the strain continues. And so now at this, after passing point C, the relationship, Yuki is no longer looking to make up or recover the relationship. But at that point, she's looking to get out of it. And so this continues because Jim is still working in the evenings. He's trying to compensate. He doesn't realize how serious it is. And then one day, Yuki says, well, I'm going to visit my mom, and she leaves. And it was too late, too little too late for Jim. So this is a kind of, the points A, B, C are critical points, because after point B, the person rather distances themselves to a point that it reaches C, where it's not recoverable, and then people are the partner is looking for a way out, and both are stressed. This movement is much faster. So this gives some idea. So consistent stress creates continuous worry. Apathy sets in as C, and strain perpetuates, and relationship ends. So it gives you some idea how the relationship of stress and strain. And so addressing strained relationships, we all have compassion. We may not have enough courage to display it. So this is the path to compassion. Again, I will cover this in more detail in the classes, but let me go through this kind of give a good explanation you understand. So the important thing to understand is that any of us could be in any of these states at any given time. It's not that we move forward and don't go back. So for certain situations, we have sympathy, other times we have pity, even doing harm. So in this case, doing harm, of course, is not, having big battles, but even unconscious bias that we express that other people feel, they suffer, and this is also doing harm. So we need to be cultivating our emotional intelligence to a point that we try to avoid that. So that's kind of a subtle area of doing harm. And then doing no harm is that you don't aggravate somebody else's suffering. At Holiness Dalai Lama says, at least do no harm. I mean, that's the about threshold point. So we should be really mindful of that. And then pity means we acknowledge the suffering of others, but it's a condescending tone. You look upon the sufferer as somewhat inferior or weak. And this is also true for self-pity when we, look at our own self. And then the sympathy is care about your suffering. And this involves recognition of suffering and acknowledge it as a concern, care and concern, but no feeling of being in the other person's shoe. But when it comes to empathy, I feel your suffering. You recognize the suffering of the other, but you feel it as an emotional state. And this is very common with loved ones, because when they suffer, you feel their suffering. And then this automatically, in most cases, leads to compassion, which means compassion is always has an action element. So I want to relieve your suffering. As I mentioned, compassion is compassion is a multi-dimensional construct. It has an action element, and there are 4 elements which I wouldn't go into at this point. And there are different levels of compassion as well. The first one is the one that we most commonly experience with loved ones, which is when we have empathy, when we see suffering, we want to take action to really alleviate that suffering. And that is compassionate, I call compassionate love. And then there is true compassion, where you don't have any tribal barriers, and you have the feeling of, you feel the suffering of other beings or other people, and then you want to take action. So it goes beyond your family and loved ones and friends. And this is a harder target. And then you have the highest level of compassion, which is called big compassion. This is experienced by or expressed by religious leaders like Buddha or Jesus Christ or someone like that. I mean, that's kind of the ultimate compassion. But most important part is the first 2 that we can try to practice. And then when we talk about addressing challenges, it is not what you say, it's how you listen. This might sound a little kind of strange, but this is, let me share with you part of my capstone project I did for the Stanford course I did for 11-month course. And for that, we need to do a project as a capstone project. And then you got to kind of share the findings with the public with a presentation, which I did. And that course, let me give you a short background. There were 125 students from 22 countries. This was Zoom, via Zoom. And we had regular meetings during the 11 months. And the capstone project is most of it. And part of that, I choose to practice compassion with the family members and understand the challenges. So in the final analysis within the family, and particularly myself and with my wife, try to understand where we experience friction. And the conclusion was, it is the style of communication. So this is not normally appreciated. I think if you think about it, you might appreciate this. So this is what I kind of came up with. I discovered, and for this, my capstone was part of the featured capstone at the Stanford website. So the summary is, this is example of, I would say, myself and my wife, but there are also, this is applicable to some of the children as well. And so engineering mind, that doesn't mean engineers, it's just the analytical, critical mind. And visceral mind is more liberal kind of thinking. Now, the characteristics are very distinct. So I have very direct communication. Because of my engineering background, mostly engineering communications are very easy to communicate. And my wife, being a kind of preschool teacher, she's much more, I would say, compassionate and more indirect, trying to explain the concepts. And my communication is more fact-based, and it's very impersonal. And visceral intelligence is storytelling. And I am very logical, and the visceral intelligence is instinctive. And my kind of engineering minded is brief, visual intelligent is elaborate, and engineering minded cognize through intellect, and visual minds cognize through experience. And engineering minded leads with the head, visually intelligent people lead with the heart. And there's no good or bad, right or wrong. There are two different styles, and they have their strengths and weaknesses. And the frequent conflict is that an engineering-minded person get very agitated, impatient when you are listening to long stories. And at the same time, visually intelligent person, in this case, my wife and me, for example, she gets very agitated when I give a short answer. It is like when you ask a teenager coming from school and say, how was the day? Oh, fine. So that kind of answer, very simple, but expect a long story about how things were or how things happened and so on. So this is a summary of the two styles that I found, and I found this is not just the family. I have friends who are in this visual intelligent category, which I experienced. And obviously, if you are in one of the categories, you feel comfortable communicating with people in the same category. So in other words, go round and round telling stories, or you have technical kind of discussions. And I experience, I think you also might experience this at work. And people who are engineering minded have a hard time, particularly engineers are mostly in the engineering minded category, have a hard time communicating with, say, marketing or sales, and they are more kind of visually intelligent. And also visually intelligent sometimes, dominates meetings, and the meetings run out of time because there's, you don't get a short and sweet answer to questions. So these are the positives and negatives, but you understand what I'm trying to get at. So these are the two I mentioned, and you may think of other styles, but be mindful when you are communicating with other people. The answer to this is not one person changed to be other. So I'm not trying to become a visually intelligent person. This is where compassionate listening comes in, that when you feel impatient, you just bear with it and listen to the other person. So with that, I think we've gone through a lot at this point, a lot to remember. I think the library will be recording this presentation, and it'll be available as well. So the takeaway, your happiness is intertwined with a web of relationships. Relationship with yourself defines relationship with others. In other words, relationship with yourself is the most important, and that is where mindfulness come in. And recognize unique individuality and common humanity, which I didn't go into a lot. Accept yourself and accept others with compassion. And common humanity is really understanding that we are all in this together. Everyone likes to have pleasure, don't like pain and suffering, and we want to live, and we fear death, and we all have that. And we got to understand the same is true for other people, similar to that everyone else is also a unique individual. So with that, I think I can take questions now. Yes. So let me please think of your questions, and please feel free to ask. You can unmute and ask questions. Feel free to do so. Nirishka, any questions in chat?
No questions in the chat just yet. I think just somebody shared that it was a good introduction, and looking forward to kind of elaborating on the takeaways. So I don't know if you want to say anything about that, about what to expect in the next few sessions. But
yeah, so the sessions that I'll be doing in the next 3 weeks, same time on Zoom, they will be more towards practice. And I'll elaborate. There are some other new concepts that I'll introduce because of the time limit. I couldn't do that on this one. And that's related to the practice, understanding what is happiness and what is unhappiness, and how, in general, and not necessarily about relationships, and that applies to relationships as well. It's important to understand that, and how compassion address our desires. And as I mentioned, the relationships are really based on our desires, our wants, and trying to fulfill our needs and wants. And there are pitfalls in doing that. And we got to learn to not just simply trying to fulfill them to satisfy each other, but there are pitfalls in doing that as well. So some of the practices will go into that detail, and some of the practices that I'll introduce, it's expected kind of homework that you had to practice at home with the relationship. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the part of the class is picking up one of your strained or challenged relationships and work on it during the 3 classes. You don't have to share anything, but just to monitor whether you make progress by applying the concepts that are introduced. So you can be the judge whether it works or not. And if not, obviously, I like to know it didn't work or why it didn't work if possible. But other than that, yeah, it's a workshop hands-on.
And Sunil, kind of a follow-up question to that is, so how do you practice some of these tools with someone who's not gone through the same session?
Well, I mean, it's like how to practice compassion, loving kindness, mindfulness. I mean, you can't read books. And an important part is that what I was sharing with you is just passing my knowledge. And as I mentioned at the beginning, knowledge is no use unless you share it or put into practice. So if you want to advance, you have to put it into practice and build the new skills. And the other important part is, even though I said I'm sharing knowledge, but I'm not sharing knowledge. I'm actually sharing my knowledge, but what you are getting is not my knowledge, because what you hear is what I say and what I show, so what you see. And then that is data, not information. So knowledge is passing information. I cannot pass information to you. I can only pass data, like between 2 machines. And what you see and hear, you interpret by yourself based on mostly your instinctive mind. And what your personality and character will determine what that interpretation is. So it's not necessarily exactly what I was thinking. It is what you understood what it should be. So the purpose of the classes with the practices is to try to align any gaps between what needs to be done and what you think needs to be done. And that can only be done with practice. And, reading books, watching TV programs, or YouTube, whatever, you can learn a lot, about compassion. And there's enough out there about mindfulness practice. You name it, it's out there. But it's of no use unless you put it to practice. So I think that's kind of summarize what is it.
Maybe just to answer the question more directly, I don't think you and the other person do not have to go through the class together. And I think it's the experience and the practice you get by going through this course is actually with yourself. And so even though you're practicing it on a strained relationship, or a relationship you want to cultivate a little bit more, enhance, what you're actually going to be doing is, when you practice these tools, it's your own relationship with that person. So while it might be easier if you both have a similar language or tool set, it doesn't have to be that way. It's actually very interesting to go through this and reflect on how the tools are being used with that person and your own reactions and responses to what is happening. And if you shift how you do things, the response the other person has back also shifts. So that person does not need to be going through the sessions as well. I mean, and definitely this is something for you all to reflect on as you go through it. And if you want, share that experience in the course as well.
Thank you, Nushka. It's a very good point. Yeah, it's very important. When you change, the person around you will change. If you're angry, people around you will be angry. So I think that's it.
And I know I shared at the very beginning when I did my intro, a lot of my practice has been with my own son. A child is a really awesome mirror to yourself. When you respond in a negative, anger, frustrated, they reflect it back to you. But if you actually take a moment to respond in a more compassionate way, it is amazing the response you get back from them. And so it's very fascinating and very interesting to kind of see in practice.
We are all children at heart.
Mm-hmm. Sunil, you have another question in the chat. So Chunlo says they have an EI mindset. So wondering what was your main challenge in relationship with someone with a more VI communication style?
So my challenge, I'm a EM, and my challenge with a VI, is that the question?
Yeah, so I guess the EM, and what was the main challenge with the VI?
Oh, EM with VI.
Yeah, what was your main challenge?
Oh, my main challenge with VI is impatience, and I still experience that. And with anybody with VI meaning when people don't get to the point quickly, I get very impatient. So that's the main challenge I have. And sometimes I kind of cut them off, and this is a common habit that we have. We interrupt and try to get to the point. And if you go to a party and have conversations, you probably can identify who's who in this communication style. So I think that I would say that is the main challenge. Because once you get impatient, then your other behavior start, you get upset, you get angry, you kind of, when you respond, you are not responding calmly. So it propagates. So it starts with the impatience. Does that answer the question, or for you asking something more?
Yeah, I think that answered it.